Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Balkan Show.
Hello.
In today's episode, we're gonna have. It's not easy to explain who this person is. He's basically everything that you can imagine and more, in a sense of how much he can talk to you about topics that are related to history, culture, sociology, you name it. He is Mirko Dautovic. He is originally from Belgrade, Serbia, and by education himself, he is an archaeologist. He finished bachelor and master studies in Belgrade. Then he finished international affairs in Cambridge in UK, his master's, and currently is a PhD student in Belgrade, Serbia, working on a topic that it's related to our today's actual topic. And you can tell that he is, in a sense, international affairs analyst, but that is not even close to what he exactly is and what he does in his life. Am I right on it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we just met, but I get the sense from him, like, really good storyteller.
Yeah, and he, in this specific episode, will tell us about the Ottomans in the Balkans, about their governance, about their heritage that's left after they left and they transformed into Turkish in the Republic of Turkey nowadays, and how did it left the mark on the present day Balkan countries. Not to forget to mention that Mirko himself is more or less present in the public media of Serbia and a bit in the region. He's been guest into many different TV shows and also writes articles. We can just name a few. In Serbia, CNN subsidiary N1, TV Shabac, BBC Serbia, and so on. He writes for the magazine Novi Magazine, so please make sure to read and hear what he has to say. He speaks 5 different languages, at least the ones that I know. There are probably more. I would not be surprised. Serbo-Croatian, French, German, English, and Arabic. He's more or less a person that enjoys music, as I said in the beginning, culture, so he will definitely have a really good outtake to this episode.
Okay, let's see.
Let's see
Yeah.
and hear, and
Enjoy,
let's
people.
start with the enjoy. Hello, Mirko. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Dusan. Hello, Onat.
Hello, Mirko. Welcome.
It's really a pleasure to have you in our show. You're really an amazing person. It's really a pity not to have you and to go into deep dive into the topic that we're having today.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you for that.
How are you?
Usually,
I'm doing fine. I'm in Beirut at the moment, and I've been very busy, writing articles for magazines, giving speeches at the conferences, plugging into TV shows to explain what's going on in Qatar or Iran. So yeah, I've been very, very busy these days.
so it's a regular Tuesday for you.
Yeah, regular Tuesday. Is it Tuesday anyway? Is it Tuesday?
No, just this expression, just like every day for you. Yeah, nothing unusual. How is the weather?
It's very nice here. I mean, so yeah, it's like 20 degrees during the day. So I'm walking around the city in t-shirt. Okay, not now. It's night. Not just t-shirt. You're fine in a t-shirt.
Yeah, I can imagine. The question from my side, Mirko, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grow up? And did you live up to your expectations?
To an extent, I wanted to become an archaeologist, and I did graduate in archaeology. I mean, it's a course I maintained throughout my youth. I'm not a practicing archaeologist, but I like to think that I'm still around there. Anthropological, international relations, history, culture. Ultimately, we are dealing with human society, and So I think I'm still practicing it in a way, although not to do too much with unearthing things.
That's what I want to say. You're doing more with the living things than with the dead things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Ottoman Empire, is it dead or not? I'm not sure.
Depending who you ask. So if there's something called Neo-Ottomanism or Turkish irredentalism from Erdogan's side, then yeah, in some sort of form, yeah. Or not? What would you say?
Yeah, you could also quote Lovecraft. Do not call dead which can eternal lie, because in countless eons even death may die. So all the constructions of the past can be revived.
Yeah, for good and for bad. I think mostly for bad. Yeah, unfortunately.
I never judge.
On it as Turkish myself, how would you say today, like as a descendant from Ottomans, do you have like how you say? Do you miss it, or would you like it not to repeat, or how would you say it, or how's the general feeling in Turkey nowadays?
Well, the general feeling is not matched with my feelings. Yeah,
Again, as I can imagine.
Yeah, the current era here, like very Ottomanistic things. People are really proud of the Ottomans, but it also had a lot of disadvantage for us. There are like division here, like Ottomans and like more modern Western people. So yeah, I'm currently happy with the current so-called republic.
Failed democracy, that's how they usually call it. Is that right? Or it depends of the level of how much is it failing, or autocracy, or tell me, Mirko, how would you rate?
You have these NGOs and international organizations which are really in the business of rating societies, classifying, labeling them. I guess hybrid regime is one of them. It's a term which is very much in vogue. So you do have elections, and they are kind of fair, in strictly speaking, but at the same time, there's plenty of machinations going on, which are not, stealing the ballots, but it's nevertheless happening. The elections are not quite regular.
Fair play. It's missing. Fair play is missing, yeah, basically.
Fair play, and then there's also this notion of majoritarianism. So this is the idea that if you win with 50% plus one vote, you have a majority, and you can do whatever you like. And the feelings of the 49%, 0.999 people, it's like nothing.
Zero.
And there is this concept that democracy is this, like, I've been given absolute rule by 50 plus one. And so you people can just stuff it. And, you need to respect me, listen to what I say, or just leave. And it's democracy. So and I have to say, it is a democracy. Democracy is a very broad term, just like any term. You can stuff it like a Christmas turkey, and put into it anything that you like. And majoritarianism, in that sense, is also, I think, part of it. It's not good for society, but
for the ruling class,
yeah,
or at least ruling 50 plus one.
Well, yeah, even for them, I wouldn't be, ruling classes that ruled in that way can fall from from great heights, and falls from great heights, as many Byzantine emperors and Ottoman sultans learned. You don't really recover from it. Unlike humans are mortal.
That's how it was, and that's how it will always be. So we now pushed into the present day. We haven't even scratched the essence of the episode regarding the Ottomans. So we're gonna do a little bit to rewind, quite a lot, just for our followers to understand your competency. You already showed. You already know a lot about international stuff, about diplomacy and politics, and also archaeology, giving your calling. But can you tell us, based on what's your competency for this episode? which we actually saw in you. But can you elaborate? When did your love, or just in general, where was the spark for you that you are into history, into international relations, into Orientalism, Middle East? So how did you gain so much knowledge and experience in the previous decade or more?
Right. Okay, so I did my master's at the University of Cambridge in international relations. And during this master's course, we had a subject called War and Society, which, for reasons of that time, focused much on Iraq and Afghanistan. It was before the Arab Spring. And during this research and reading about societies in Syria, in Palestine, in Iraq and Afghanistan, I realized how many similarities there are between the Balkans and the Middle East. And these similarities partly stem from our common Ottoman heritage, but also from our common post-Ottoman heritage. That is the way great powers divided and categorized peoples between Bosnia to Bangladesh. I've been interested in researching these comparisons and common threads. So one of them, and it's a topic that I'm doing for my current PhD, is to compare two post-Ottoman provinces, or rather Ottoman provinces under foreign occupation, Bosnia-Herzegovina under Austro-Hungarian occupation, so 1878-1918, and Egypt under British and partly French occupation from 1881 until, well, you can question when does it end? You mean
1956 at least?
Yeah, 1953.
The latest.
The coup, the Suez Crisis, it's thereabout, that the British influence completely wanes in the Egyptian state. But it has clearly lasted much longer than the Austro-Hungarian influence in Egypt, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I was in Egypt last year, and not just in Hurghada and Sharm el Sheikh. I was in Cairo, walking around Cairo for about a month, I think. And you could ask yourself, well, what did the Austrians, Austro-Hungarians leave to Bosnia, both in terms of material things, and what did they leave in the terms of institutions? And what did the British leave to Egypt, and what did the French leave to Egypt? And it's in this way you can see that different empires have different motivations, approaches, and goals ultimately. Why are they there in some foreign country that they are dominating? Very different reasons, but the empires will behave in a similar way. So this is another aspect now that interests me more than just connections between Balkans and the Middle East. How do the empires behave?
It's really huge topic for itself, and you can go deep dive into many different subcategories of that. I mean, the possibilities are endless where you can end up with this research.
Yeah, you would need at least 100 lifetimes to fully. And one of these empires is also the Ottoman Empire that connects us to the Middle East. That the place where I'm now. I mean, I know it sounds believable, but Beirut has many similarities throughout history with Belgrade, and Ottoman Empire, just like any other empire, lasted for centuries. So researching it would take you dozens of lifetimes because it lasts for so long. It has so many different aspects to be researched. And I'm not an Ottomanist. I have to emphasize. So I am political anthropology, international relations. My languages of research are English, German, French, to an extent Arabic. I also studied a bit of Persian at the Iranian Cultural Center in Belgrade. But
that I didn't know.
But Ottoman or in Turkish, I mean, it's present, or rather all these languages are present in the Ottoman language. but I still haven't got around to learning it. Though I do, it's on my list of languages.
Is it true that during the Ottoman period, at least in the first couple of centuries, there were like 4 different languages were used in for different purposes? Like the poems and art was Persian, Farsi. The Arabic was for Islam, obviously. They say Greek and Serbian for military purposes because of the military leaders. So it was like a multilingual, official empire, multilingual official languages that had this empire.
Well, I would say it's not just the case in the first centuries of the empire. It's throughout the empire's history that it remained multilingual, and all these things that you mentioned, they weren't that strictly categorized.
Mm-hmm.
There are in the travelogues. So one of my sources, when you deal with history, you need to say your sources, and my sources tend to be Western travelers and diplomats who travel or who stay and research and have an opportunity to observe the Ottoman society, what are the currents taking place in it, what are the events, which are the factions, how do they behave, how do they see. And there were diplomats who noticed that some pashas, some Osmanlis were praising Arabic poetry, some were praising Persian poetry. Arabic, as you said, was the holy language of Islamic scholarship, but all these languages that are like parallel. Shall we call it Serbian? I mean, I don't mind.
Yes, I would say Slavic, Western Slavic, Western Balkan Slavic,
Yeah, Slavonic, Bulgarian, Wallachian, Greek, Greek, and which else? Circassian, Tatar. So you had all these languages that were present for one reason or another in the Ottoman Empire. And for instance, plenty of the pashas who were recruited through the Shirme and became janissaries and then rose to the ranks to be imperial administrators were still using their language. Albanian was also used. Albanians were very present in the Ottoman administration.
I think they were the most often these great grand viziers were Albanian. Like when you separate by nationality, which is again, I know it was fluid, it was not specific, but I can say they named quite a few of them. And Circassian, you were mentioning, sorry.
Just always say ethnicity for this period.
Ethnicity,
a loaded term. It starts from 19th century, and it means something else in English, in fact, not ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the Circassians. So the Mamelukian rulers of Egypt tended to be Circassians. So these are the people who settled what's today north of Caucasus, so a region around Krasnodar, Armavir.
Mm-hmm.
This was once settled by Circassians.
We had them in the Balkans, in Moravia Valley. I know a few villages that have Circassian background.
Mm-hmm.
Cherkezi.
Yeah, they were used by the empire.
Auxiliary force.
They were also recruited forcefully in a way. So, but they formed the elite, and they used their own language. So in Egypt, they were isolated from the Arabic majority, and they were only intermarrying until well into 19th century. They were only intermarrying themselves or Turks. And there was a racial component to it too. They considered themselves to be like the whites, the lords, and not the Arabs.
But was the case also with those? Again, I don't know how to call them. If they were called Albanian background, but at least they were the dynasty, the last king dynasty of Egypt had Albanian background. Again, point out not nationalistic or not ethnicity speaking, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, we need to be we seem to have to walk on eggshells around these. Muhammad Pasha, Ali Pasha, who established the dynasty that would become a royal dynasty of Egypt and rule Egypt for some 140 years, I think.
Yes.
He was from a place called Kavala. I mean, the city still exists. It's deep in Greece. It's across Tassos, so it's closer to the border with Turkey than to today's Albania. But this is also because there was no borderland. There was no border in that time, and you had Albanians living in Athens, and even these travelers and diplomats, foreigners, they would say that this place is settled by Arnauts. And it's only natural that, these empty lands, and they were pretty empty, the Balkans. So, peoples were just moving through them and settling any empty region that they could find. And so it's no wonder that the people were leaving the mountainous areas and going into search for fertile land, or any better land than the mountains. So that's no wonder why so many Arnauts are then called Arnauts. I mean, the people speaking the same language today, they're called Albanians. Why they were everywhere in the Balkans in that sense.
One interesting fact, I mean, Ona told me about, do you call something about Arnaut and the roads or Arbanas or something?
The Arnaut,
Kaldırma.
The Kaldırma.
The stone part.
Yeah, and in Albania they call it Turkish Kaldırma, actually. And yeah, we also have like some foods that are not exist in Albania, but we call it Arnavut soup, Arnavut, liver. But they're not exist in Albania. Probably some guy brought it here and we called it.
Most likely. We also have in Serbia called the Albanska salata or Albanian salad, or somebody call it the prepržolj. So it's basically old bread that you put in oil and with spices, and you just put it on the oven and just you have it. And it's not salad actually, it's just baked bread in oil, and they call it Albanian salad for some reason. Again, maybe some guy came and just said, "Oh, he's from Albania or Kosovo." Just okay, we call it like that. Oh, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and even it came as to Levant via the Ottoman Navy, because plenty of the Albanians, they were recruited for the Ottoman Navy, and so they were based here in what was then Vilayet al-Sham, the Syrian Vilayet. So it's been circulating around.
They were not the only ones, as you mentioned. The other not nationalities, but people from the Balkans were basically spread out everywhere. Not just Muslims, but also other Orthodox Christians, or only mostly Muslims were spread out around the Ottoman Empire.
No, you're right. I mean, you had plenty of different communities. So imagine the Armenian community. We have Armenians in Serbia who are descendants of Armenians who settled in the Ottoman era. And there was quite a few of them. There were quite a few of them, and I think there was even an Armenian church in Novi Sad in the north for quite a while. I think it was demolished a few years ago for some shopping mall or something. And but yeah, I mean, so this is also part of what the empires leave behind themselves. These nets and channels of people circulating around an empire within its borders. And then when the empire collapses, some of these peoples are stuck somewhere, and they have to make do and learn how to live there. And there's a funny story. There's so my surname Dautovic. Clearly, it has an Ottoman name in it, Daud, and the typical South Slavic suffix ovic. And so I'm not aware of any of my ancestors who were, so to say, Muslim. This family that with the name of which I bear comes from Lika, so it's part of Croatia today. And in the Habsburg censuses that were taken after the Karlovac peace, so it's 1699, I think. There is a mention of a village called Dautović. So I'm not sure if some Muslim family transferred back into Christianity or converted to Christianity or if some Christian family took the name of the village, or if some family settled there after, like completely unrelated, or if they were Arnautian Christian families who came together with the Serbs during the great migration of the Serbs under the Patriarch Arsenije Čarnojević. Who knows? However, I have this surname, so there's an Ottoman root to it. And when I was graduating in archaeology, and there's this ceremony, and you are awarded a diploma, and the dean calls out your name. So he says Dautović, and I rise, I start walking, and then he says Vuk. What? It's not a very. There are people who bear the same surname. But so I looked at him, and then the dean said Dautović, and then Vuk looked at me and I said Mirko, and then we met afterwards. Are we related? It turned out that we weren't, but his family came from Syria, like hundreds of years ago now, and they stayed here, and so there is this again dynamism. That empires leave behind themselves. And we can see it in other empires as well. Imagine all of the Rishi Sunaks who, came from India once the empire collapsed, the British Empire, and they're here now. Their descendant is Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Sorry, they changed so fast I could not keep up. Okay, so he's the current Prime Minister. Yeah, I remember.
Yes.
Because... honestly, I've even forgot the name of the last one before him. She was only for a few weeks or so.
45 days.
45. Then she needs to. Yeah, I need to apologize to her then.
It was a bit of a revolving door. But it seems to have stabilized now. For now.
Please let me know what's the name of what's the meaning actually of the Daud itself. I don't know.
It's the Ottoman version of the Arabic Dawood, which is again a variation of the name David.
Like Moses is Musa, Jesus is Isa, so Daud is for David.
Yeah.
Interesting. You mentioned the village in Croatia, and I don't know if it's not in the Lika, it's more in the south. You also have two villages that were called Islam Greek and Islam Latin, Islam Grčki and Islam Latinski. Which I guess, because how you interpreted the meaning of your village and the backstory, I guess the ones were also, both of them were Muslims, and one converted to Orthodoxy and the other converted to Catholicism. Maybe, because I know the Islam Grčki is Serbian and Islam Latinski is Croatian.
Unfortunately, we can only speculate. There are no ethnographic researchers going around, excuse me, can you... they were lucky they could find people who could understand what these inhabitants of these villages were saying. So in this census, you have spellings which are Italian looking, and you have spellings which are German looking, because the people doing the censuses came from different parts of the Habsburg Empire.
So German did in Gothic letters, and Italian did in...
No. It's not the Gothic letters. No. It's just that the way, for instance, how would they write, S or F in one or the other language? How would you write Y, the letter, pronunciation Y? Would you use Y? Would you use I? Would you use Yot? Different types. So when you read it, you realize that the scribes who were taking these names came from different linguistic backgrounds, which is, again, very common for an empire. There is no canonized language at this point. Empires use different languages. Some languages not even being spoken, like Latin. It was in use in Hungary well into 19th century, possibly even into 20th, if I'm not mistaken.
Really? Do you use Hungarian as an official?
You use Hungarian, you use many languages. But for some documents, you use exclusively one version, or you mix. They were not obsessed with purity. That's what I wanted to say. Go back to the Ottoman Empire.
That's what I want to ask.
The Ottoman language itself, as Onat knows probably, it's not really it's not Turkish. It is a mixture of Persian, Arabic, Turkish, which changes through time. It changes drastically. So Ottoman language at the beginning of the empire and the Ottoman language at the end of the empire are, well, they're not different, but it evolved over these, 600 years?
How are they ruling the whole empire, especially in the Balkans, with that different, not having standardized language, like one coming from Constantinople to Sarajevo or Belgrade or I don't know, Athens? How did they work? How did they govern that area?
Well, it was very well divided into administrative units. So they basically continued with the Roman model, which I think they inherited from the Byzantine Empire. So you had major provinces and then minor provinces within them. You had Beylik, like the major Beylik or Vilayet. Then you had like small Beyluk. Then you had Pashaluk. So it's Nahia. So it also changes depending on the time of the empire. So it's again not the same in 13th century, not the same in 19th century. But they basically had a division of administrative units, which were listening and sending information to the headquarters, to Istanbul. Which is not something that the European states start with. If we compare, Europeans are in feudalism. So, French king really needs to fight to expand his state, not in territorial senses, in the sense of expanding his border towards the Rhine. They do that. I mean, they do that. But they also have to fight to deepen their state because they have minimal control over territories which are ruled by hereditary aristocrats, dukes, marquises, counts, etc. And in the Ottoman Empire, you don't really have that. So all landowners, they're not quite aristocracy. They are landowners, and they are landowners at the mercy of the Sultan. So what they get the timar, a little possession or a major possession, from which they gain wealth because people are producing food on it or whatever, and they extract wealth from this. They take surplus value, to use Marxist terms, and they use this to equip themselves to go to war. So that's how you get the Spahis, the riders, the cavalry of the empire. So these people are at the mercy of the Sultan, and when they die, their property will probably go to their son, but it's the Sultan's to decide. It's up to the Sultan to decide whether this property will go to the next in line, to the son. It probably will, because that is how the army is being kept in order. But what my point is, they continue the tradition of the Byzantine Empire, which is you get your property via the state. The state bestows something upon you. You are a functionary of the state. You're not. You did not inherit something from your father, uncle, something.
I see.
No, you are at the mercy of the state, and you need to prove yourself. And of course, this system proves itself very well, but like any other system, it collapses. I mean, it's a victim of its own success. And similar thing happened to Byzantium as well, where you have this, at first it's supposed to be just for the functionary, but ultimately people are people and they want to leave something to their children. And over the time, the system stops functioning. And you can't take away something from them.
But nevertheless, they tried to modernize. I mean, maybe too late, or to change something. As you said, it evolved through the centuries, so it was not the same at the beginning and the end, especially in the Balkans.
They tried, however, some traditions are locked, and some reforms take a lot of administrative and diplomatic, political skill, wheeling and dealing, and plenty of sultans and grand viziers paid with their lives attempts to reform anything about the army or the states. As Onat probably knows, the list is long, but Selim III paid with his life. He was the Sultan at the time of the first Serbian insurrection against the Ottomans. So beginning of the 19th century. He was, I think, killed in 1807. And he was one of those who attempted to reform the army corps, so to abolish the janissaries and to introduce a professional army, or, well, an army similar to those of the European age. And remember, that's the age of Napoleon. So, there's plenty of emulates, and in the meantime, you have janissaries, which are, at that point, not even an army. I mean...
decadent.
Decadent, but also they're nothing like you imagine. I mean, janissaries of the previous era, they were a formidable force. The janissaries of the early 19th century are barely, I mean, most of them aren't even soldiers. They're not even soldiers. And so they go into insurrection, they overthrow Selim III and kill him. And one of the next sultans, Mahmud II, who's one of my favorite Ottoman sultans, he basically has to wait for 18 years before he is ready to challenge the janissaries. And the incident that he deliberately causes is called Auspicious Incident. I believe it's still celebrated in Turkey today, 1826, when janissaries revolt and his new army manages to crush them all, to exterminate them fully. And he burned Belgrade Forest of Istanbul, named after Belgrade, because some of them fled into it. And he burned it all. That's the point where he manages to destroy janissaries and to create a new army, which will be the format of the army that will be kept until the end of the empire.
Really interesting. Never heard about this. Yeah,
it's a major event, and it didn't go without consequences. The introduction of the new force, which had European uniforms, new hats, the fezzes, those were actually introduced as a symbol of reform to replace the turban.
Yeah.
Although originally they're not neither from Turkey nor from Middle East, they are from Tunisia or from Algiers. Or...
Precisely.
Fun fact.
Mahmud II liked that some of his admirals, captains, brought this fashion from Tunisia, which was still under the suzerainty of the Ottoman Empire. So they brought it with them, and he liked it and just said, okay, we need to expand this. And in his reforms were also aimed at undermining the sumptuary laws. So these are the laws about who gets to wear what. And these laws were very, very prevalent throughout Europe, not just Europe, in any civilization. You can't wear some things unless you belong to that particular class. And by class, it's not just, maybe it is like which class you belong to, like rich, middle, poor, but also, for instance, in Ottoman society, as a Christian, you can't wear yellow color. That color is reserved for the Muslims. And there is a sad tale of a Christian beggar who was given yellow slippers by a Muslim, benevolent Muslim, who wanted just to give him some clothes. And the guy was executed for wearing yellow because he was not Muslim. So yellow color is not for you to wear. You still have it in some ways, the way what we wear. I mean, okay, it's not prescribed by the laws of a state, but there are norms of society who guide us what can we wear, which colors, which kinds of clothes, etc. And just that in medieval ages and new age as well, so 17th, 18th, 19th century, these laws still applied in some countries, even if on books, just on, like, legally speaking, just like dead letter on a paper, but it's still there as a law. For instance, you can't wear shoes which are longer than, I don't know, 20 centimeters if you are just a burgher, just a citizen of some town. You need to be an aristocrat to wear longers.
Sorry, so this was not at all based on religion, or it had some influence, but it was just Some guy came up, yellow is not for you, and that's it. Some fashion guy just said, no, that doesn't fit you, your style. You don't have that vibe. No, you don't do the yellow.
Yeah, you don't belong to this class. You are not. Then you just need to emphasize what type of a class, which criterion is important for your society. So for the Ottomans, it was the religion, which religion you belong to, and of course which rank in the administration you possess.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't have aristocracy like in, let's say, Burgundy or France, where you had this like you can be as rich, or you can be much richer than me, but I'm still the Count of Fufu. And therefore, you can't wear this color. You can't wear these shoes. They're only mine to wear. You had these laws throughout every civilization. It's a very cultural thing. You are not allowed to wear something. We wear our identity on ourselves. So that is why you're not allowed to infiltrate it. So the ruling classes guide this very, very jealously. And when these upstarts, people with new money, come, they can buy whatever they want. And in order to prevent this, the ruling classes kept on insisting on these laws. They cannot wear what they can buy. They can buy it, but they must not wear it. And but it's very difficult to enforce. And then I would like now to talk about Pierre Bourdieu, wonderful French sociologist. I've just passed an exam in his sociology.
Congratulations.
His work on distinction in the French and how the French elites of 1960s and 70s positioned themselves and remain at the top of the food chain is just marvelous. And ever since I realized what they have been doing, I see it everywhere, and even here.
It's really fascinating to have these parallels. You just read about something, you just make connections, dots and stuff. We mentioned at the beginning languages, and clothing. With Onat, when I met him, the thing that we clicked the most was everyday things that, as you said, the empire was all around, and the clothing and the languages itself. Okay, there's some things going on, and we just make the parallel. Okay, there's some connections. It's amazing, really. Just one part of the world or other century around, and you just make the connected two dots. And
similarities are everywhere. Especially if you find some societies that have some similarities between each other. That's why I love comparative history, comparative analysis. Anyway, see, Japanese Edo society. It was samurai-based, warrior caste, very prominent. What was their relationship towards the peasants, the serfs? What was the right of a serf? Did he have any rights? For instance, they had this, I don't know if you know about this Japanese rule of crossroads, but basically if a samurai would find a peasant on a crossroad, he was at liberty to cut off his head simply for a reason to practice.
What?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on Japanese culture. I was also amazed when I heard this. But apparently it was the rule in the medieval ages. And of course, you have plenty of peasants, but no one wants to, you're killing their property. So you were asked not to. But you also have a similar, it's not quite a similar parallel, but this omnipotence of the warrior class is also present in Europe in the medieval ages. So a knight can do whatever he likes, less.
Yep.
And also with in the Ottoman Empire, there's nothing worse than when an armed Ottoman, a Muslim cavalryman enters your village. Because as Christians, you are obliged to give him whoever and whatever he wants. And he won't give you a dime for it. You're obliged to give him whomever and whatever he wants.
And that's why most of non-Muslim Balkan people nowadays just have in general a negative impression of the Ottoman Empire. That's one of the many, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so. So this isn't something that the state, the Ottoman Sultan would say, yeah, this is perfect. It's just, we also have to understand that the Ottoman Empire is not some totalitarian state which is able to control and know what's going on in its borders. I mean, it's what some historians call Dromocracy. Dromos is road, drum. And the country exists only along this road. That's where the state exists. Because up to there, the Sultan's laws can reach. And beyond the road, there's nothing. There's no state. It's anarchy. It's just on the map. Today, when we watch these maps and atlases, etc., we see these colors like Ottoman state, Ottoman Empire green, Habsburgs yellow, I don't know, Russians green, light green, whatever. States do not exist in such a way. That's just a representation. They do not control their areas. Not fully. Not to the full extent. You have a rule in your capital, in the major cities, and along the roads. Beyond that, there's no control. And your agents of control are precisely these armed cavalrymen. And you count on them joining your army. And you cannot sacrifice their loyalty just because they hurt some Christian peasant who's useless to you anyway. And these travelogues of Western travelers that I'm reading, they mention continuously how, because they are moving through the empire in a sort of a caravan. So there's an entire, what's the word?
You can use a Turkish one if you know.
So, I mean, not a sortie, but an entire group of people following them. And main position. Cavalrymen. These cavalrymen, they take up the main position. So when they enter a village, and the Westerners, they want to pay for milk and eggs and bread and everything. And the villagers are just scared, terrified, because they know what's coming. So they start excusing themselves, but we have no eggs, our hens are old maids, our cows never saw a bull, so we have nothing. And then the Ottoman cavalryman tells the Westerner, see, your approach led nowhere. Now let me try mine. And then violence ensues. Yatagans are drawn, and threats and curses, and plenty of hits are they're not exchanged, they're given to the Christian peasants. And all of a sudden, as the Western travelers write, milk and honey flowed our way, eggs were reproduced, breads, girls appeared, beautiful girls. All the things and persons that Christian peasants are hiding suddenly show up. And then you have, to the contrary, some English travelers in liberated Serbia. So Serbia after 1840s, let's say. So the Ottomans are only in the cities in the northern Serbia, in fortresses, and south of that line, I mean, not to bother you now with the map, but it's basically what's today northern Serbia. And they say that the peasants are very pleasant and hospitable, that they are economical, but that they give food freely. So they speak obviously of this change now that these people feel themselves unthreatened by the Ottoman cavalry, how it changes.
It's interesting what you mentioned that the whole empire, where these cavalrymen were passing and everything, it's based on the roads, and that everything around it was basically left out on itself. I mean, it was governed, obviously, but not directly. Is it because of this type of, governance? Was people in the Balkans were able to preserve or to build up their own ethnicities and later on nationalities and stuff?
I was thinking about the same thing. This our attitudes towards the state, however you call the state, wherever its capital.
Yeah. They didn't assimilate to one specific Ottoman society. That's what I want to say. Yeah,
it's the same attitude. It's the attitude you kept. This foreign state that wishes to impose something on me. This foreign state that wishes to take money or my wealth. I don't have any money as a peasant. To take my chickens or my daughters, my sisters, my wives. I was thinking about it, but it's the thing is, It's not like Spain or France or Poland were much different. The only thing that they had was when the age of nationalism came, their version of the cavalrymen, their aristocracy, spoke the same language and had the same religion. And they didn't see themselves, and they did not position themselves as different in the terms of ethnicity. While here, you did have this. There is a constant reference to the Turks or Poturice, Potures. And these people are not Turks. They are Slavic-speaking Muslims in the Balkans, I mean. But I think this is the key. The oppressing classes could not be recognized as being the same with us because the borders of the Ottoman classification were too strong to overcome. Nationalism through the 19th century struggled against monarchies in Europe, but ultimately aristocracies could be assimilated or be perceived to be of my nation. German aristocrats became Germans by the First World War. They became Germans because they spoke German language. They were, either Protestant or Catholic. It was a major issue back then. Now it's not that much, but back then it was a major issue. But Spanish aristocracy, they remain Spanish. They speak Spanish. They're Catholics. French aristocracy as well, no matter that their heads were cut off. But still, they speak Spanish. They speak French. They are
after they cut off a little bit less.
After they cut off a little bit less. Yeah. So in that sense, there is this feeling they are not at least foreigners. There's no foreign domination. While peoples of Central Europe, Southeastern Europe, Eastern Europe, and we can also open the topic of Poles and Ukrainians under Russians. But they had this sense that they were not just exploited, but that they were dominated by a foreign force. Once they became aware, nationally aware. And the Ottoman Empire introduced something called Millet system. And again, Onat probably heard about this. I'm very curious how
it.
You still have it.
Yeah,
please explain.
No, in Turkey, we still have Kurdish people, Turkish people, Greeks, Armenians, but as a whole, we are one millet. So we are one nation, but not the ethnic thing.
So you have only one millet, or
in the constitution, every person who lives in Turkey is Turkish citizen, whatever its ethnicity. So it was similar in the Ottomans as well.
Yeah, the Ottomans tried to bridge this crisis that nationalism opened through their Tanzimat reforms. And even before, we've just mentioned Selim III and Mahmud II. And this is this attempt to modernize your state, but they can't. And there are institutional reasons why they can't reform themselves. They're similar to why Austro-Hungarian Empire can't fully reform itself and why it ends up being broken apart. Nationalisms eat these multi-ethnic empires from inside. And one of the ways that the Ottomans tried to bridge it is to institutionalize the concept of millet. So they wanted to create a category of not nation, but peoples within the empire. But these peoples would be divided not on the European criteria of language, but on the Ottoman criteria of religion. So you would have the Rumi millet. Rumi comes from Rome, Roman millet. These were Christian Orthodox people. No matter if they are Bulgarian, Romanian, Wallachian, Serbian, Greek, Armenian, Arabic, they belong to the Rum, to the Romans. So they form one nation within the empire. and Armenians form another because they are a separate church, they're monophysites. Through these pillars, confessionalism it's called in sociology, you try to form some kind of a unit to help you run the empire, to decrease the identitarian tensions within the empire. And this is something the Ottomans tried and failed. Their reform, I would say, didn't go too far. It didn't go far enough. Christians were still being discriminated against by the state. And at the same time, it couldn't go beyond that because the elites, Muslim elites, would not allow such a sudden breach and loss of exclusivity. We are on top, and suddenly you want to make Christians equal to us. That's not going to run. Mahmud II destroyed the Janissaries, but there were plenty of other elites in the country.
Could you explain the Millet itself? So, like, I'm a random Christian in Little Asia or somewhere in the Peloponnese, wherever in the Balkans, for instance. So, did I go to some specific person and just apply there? And like, I'm part of Millet, or was it a top Millet person, or how did it function?
No. You are, based on your baptism, you are part of the Rumi Millet. It's not a choice. You don't get to choose. You can only convert to Islam. Which is best. It's also something that happens in the 19th century. People do convert to Islam.
Even in the 19th century?
Yes. In fact, most of the people that we have, that I found, who willingly converted to Islam were in 19th century. You probably heard of Omer Pasha Latas.
Yes, of course. I know his backstory. Yeah, he was from Croatia.
Yeah, he's from Croatia. This is one of those stories. He found himself, my options are lost in Austro-Hungarian Empire. On no fault of mine, I have to flee. I end up in the Ottoman Empire. I need to make a career. I need to make a living. There is this path. It involves converting to Islam because I can't enter the Ottoman army without being a Muslim. Yeah, not much of a loss. It's a rational economic decision, I would say. And scholars that I read who deal with the issue of conversions to whether to Islam or to some other religion, that's not the issue. They tend to be economical about it. There's an economic calculus, and what do I gain? What do I lose? Seem to gain more. Why not convert? Very few people are dogmatic believers, in my opinion. In the sense that people can believe in God, but that they're fixated on I'm not quite sure if filioque, or most people don't care about these things. Again, I've been reading memoirs, or rather reports, of one of these English diplomats from 17th century, and he has a longer passage on Poturice, so the converts to Islam in Bosnia, Serbia, Balkan area. And he describes their beliefs, which are absolute cacophony of several religions. They are Muslims, but they still worship Jesus, and they think Muhammad is a Parakletos, it's a Holy Ghost, and they drink wine, but during months of Ramadan they don't drink it with spices, and that's why it's okay.
It sounds good, actually.
Agree.
No, I mean, where was the region? This mixture is like amusing me because for example, in Anatolia there are some I guess it was Karamanoğulları. They speak Turkish. They write Turkish in Greek alphabet.
Yes.
And their mixture is like I'm not sure about their religion, but I guess they were like something between Muslim and Christian.
Yes, because these divisions, it's the state that which is trying to impose something to control. We need to categorize these people because Europeans are categorizing. Europeans have developed a modern state. We need to imitate this in order to gain control over our resources, human resources. Otherwise, we're going to sink. However, when you try to impose these things on living people, somewhere in Karaman or somewhere in Balkan mountains or Bosnia, it's not going to work because these people have their own lives and they're not subject to your categorization. And these things that we see as like Muslim, Christian, Catholic, Orthodox, Bektashi, Sunni, Shia, these things, when you see people how they behave in the field, they're porous, they are syncretic, they move, they exchange their religion. So you have Catholics in Albania celebrating Ramadan.
Really? Catholics in Albania celebrate?
Yeah. You have a bizarre mountain in Albania again, where a grave of Ali ibn Talib's brother is buried. When half brother of son of Ali ibn Talib is buried. So he died in the Battle of Karbala in 680. How does his grave end up on a mountain in Albania? But it's important, and there's a Bektashi Tekiye, the Rish house, on the top of this mountain. And and Christians for the feast of the Assumption of the Mother of God, Theokotos, Madonna, they climb this mountain in the summertime. So this mountain is obviously something to do something holy, even in pre-Christian era. So it's pagan, pre-Roman, Illyrian worship of the mountain, which is common in these regions. It's probably that this paganism was then topped by Christianity, was then topped by Islam. So you have the holy space, but it's occupied by two religions at the same time. It's nothing uncommon. It happens all the time.
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, yeah. This is similar, yeah. So people still attach value and importance to some place, but they will read it through their new religion. It doesn't mean that they're exclusive. This exclusivity is a relatively recent thing because we started thinking that if I want to have an identity, it has to be clear and cut off from the rest of the identities. If I'm a Muslim, I will have nothing to do with Christians. If I'm Christian, I will have nothing to do with the Muslims, etc., etc.
Which is sad, really sad.
It's sad, and it's also not what our ancestors were into. I mean, they were obviously very porous. They were marrying each other. It wasn't uncommon for a pasha to take a Christian wife who wouldn't have to convert. The children would be born Muslim, but she wouldn't have to convert. And all of a sudden, this pasha had a Christian son-in-law. They wouldn't invite each other to feasts, to dinners, Christmas, whatever, Ramadan, Eid, Bayram, the circumcision or the baptism of their sons. These things continue. And you also have plenty of crypto believers. So you have crypto Christians who, although they converted to Islam, they continued having these Christian traditions throughout generations, and vice versa.
Jews did this,
Muslims and crypto Jews who continued, even after their ancestors were forced to convert to Christianity, they continued doing things ritualistic, at least, that would maintain their connection to the faith of their ancestors. But they mix because they have to hide and they have to pretend, so they adopt different things, and we get a very individualistic product in the end.
Which is insane. I mean, I think some people know this, but they don't want to admit it, and some people just don't want to believe it. I mean, either way around, and people in general don't talk about this, which is really sad. I mean, given the fact that we have shared so much things in common throughout the Balkans and Middle East and the whole ex-Ottoman Empire, And now, I mean, it's the world trend. It's not, we're not an exception to this, but being divided and having your own specific group and not intermingling is just sad. Really, it makes me sad to think about it.
Yeah, as President Trump said, it's sad. It's the tendency. I mean, we can't do much about it. I mean, we can only talk and discuss it, and don't give it any importance when it comes to ourselves. I know I won't.
The most funny thing about like us right now, three of us, I can say we have one thing in common, not just by being part of the being actually descendants of the people from the Ottoman Empire, but all of us have something to do with Istanbul. I mean, I know your funny stuff. I mean, we can start from you, Mirko. So you said Daoud and everything, but you also mentioned it has some. I remember from we talked like years ago about some Viking serving people in the Byzantine Empire and being Constantinople. So could you tell us about it? It's really fun to hear about this.
Yeah, these are the Varangian Guard. I don't know. I don't know if you've ever heard of them or not.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
So they were the Vikings. The Vikings tried to capture Constantinople, I think, at least twice. And they came down the Volga, down the Dnieper River. They carried their boats on their shoulders. So they descended from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea via Dnieper, and they laid siege to Constantinople. They failed, but the emperors were so impressed that they decided to hire them, to make mercenaries out of them. And they, plenty of Scandinavian Vikings spent years at the court in Constantinople defending the emperor as his personal bodyguard, elite unit of the empire. And at some point, it also expanded, not just the Scandinavian Vikings, Anglo-Saxon Englishmen also came to serve. Normans and Anglo-Saxons. And when Normans conquered England in 1066, some of the Anglo-Saxon nobility, they lost their lands, so they found refuge in Constantinople as mercenaries of the empire. And so some of them, I mean, it lasted for several centuries. And these Vikings also founded the Russian states of Kiev, Novgorod, Yaroslav, etc. And there were plenty, of course, of intrigues and cruelties and internecine killings, Game of Thrones for Kiev. And some of them fled to, they were refugees at the court of Emperor Manuel I Komnenos, who settled some of them in the region of Banat, which was that borderlands between Hungarian kingdom and the Byzantine Empire. And these people are called Vagyag. And one part of my family, my maternal grandmother's surname was Mariashki, and there is still a village called Vagyarski. So the Vagyag village in Banat on the Romanian side of the border. So these are probably the descendants of the Vikings who were settled there. Again, something that an empire would do. You take people from here and you put them here. I mean, the Austrians did the same with the Serbs. Like, okay, these people, they're good soldiers. Let's put them on the borderland with the Ottoman Empire. And they just, from Adriatic to deep into Transylvania, you had this military border against the Ottoman Empire, protecting the Habsburg realm. It's a very, very common thing for any empire to do. Just move an ethnicity from here to here. Very contrary to the contemporary conception of people.
Same as my family.
Exactly. What was about your family and your connection?
Yeah, my father's side was family in Anatolia, and the government took them and put them in a village in Macedonia. So they lived there for like hundreds of years, and then after the Balkan Wars, they lost connection, and 1960s they come back to Turkey.
So you were one of the last muhajirs, so to say. How would you translate muhajir in English? Like refugees or no?
Yeah.
Well, there's left.
Yeah.
There's no
not
exact. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much. Expats, yeah, maybe the expats, forceful ones, forceful expats, yeah, that's the meaning. But how long were they in the Balkans, like in Macedonia, present-day Macedonia, North Macedonia?
I tracked 4 generations because when I got my father's birth certificate, I found his surname was Yashar, which is my grandfather's father. So it's probably like more than that, but that's the all I can track back.
You still have families right there, or some relatives, or some connection there?
Not much, but like there are some Turkish families in the village. When I went there, we met, and they moved there later, but it was a Turkish village. Now they are the only Turkish family in the village.
But still, I think it's the biggest Turkish community after Bulgaria nowadays in the Balkans.
Yeah, I guess so, because in Bulgaria it was huge, and after Bulgaria, I guess in the Macedonian region, I mean, it contains like Greece and Macedonia both.
But yeah, as we started speaking about the connection with Balkans and Istanbul, Constantinople, from my side, I also have not from Ottoman period, but before as Mirko from Byzantine period. It's a little bit after the Varangian Guard, or at the end 12th century. So my surname is Angelović. Angel or angel is the basis. So Angeloi or angels were also the dynasty in Constantinople. And they were the last one ruling before the fall under the Fourth Crusader War or conquest in 1204.
They caused the Fourth Crusade. They caused the Constantinople.
Exactly. It was the cause was the other thing, but in the end they caused completely the wrong thing that they were supposed to do. But yeah, they were supposed to go like 1,500 kilometers more, but they just didn't want to go more. Like, here, some riches. Yeah, let's take it. So it was the demise of my ancestors, or at least they should be my ancestors. Why should? Because one of them fled to the Thessaloniki, present-day Greece. Back then it was also Thessaloniki, and one of them even ruled for a century or so, and part of those branched out to present-day Kosovo with the emphasis of international recognition, blah, blah, but in Novo Brdo, and they were, again, at one point, I guess they were Slavianized from Angel, became Angelović, because it was said they were Greek-speaking, but because there were Slavs around, they make the surname to be Angelović. And one of them actually later on became Grand Vizier in the Ottoman Empire, Mahmud Angelović. So, or depending how they translate it, but it was him, and his brother became the second person in the Serbian despot state. So yeah, and this Novo Brdo is not so far away from Trgovište, which is in Serbia, around Vranje, and it was mostly trading part. And I guess because my surname Angelović is rare, there's Angelković, Angelić, Arangelović, and so on. So this is really rare, and you can only find it there. And they have a lot of Greek names, in my family, Panagia, Yanaki, and so on. Not Yanaki, something else, I forgot. But nevertheless, there is some resemblance, there's some influence, but again, vague, since the Ottomans didn't make really precise surnames in their, yeah. So you found...
This is the Mahmud Pasha Angelović.
Do we have the same beard? Yeah, I see the resemblance.
The resemblance is uncanny.
So he was just for our audience. He was just showing the.
Yeah, there's a new version of it as well.
Oh, in color. Oh, nice. did AI made this? Did you make AI intelligence?
I don't know.
Did you put...
But we can make with one of your pictures and like some Ottoman sultans, viziers pictures, we can make some combination.
That would be really cool. But yeah, coming to this, as I said, the naming, the surname, and so it's not fake. Can you tell us a bit more, Mirko? Like, how did the Ottomans govern in a way that, I mean, at least how they know who was this guy in this village? I guess they didn't need the surnames. Even back in the early days of the Turkish Republic, there were no surnames.
Yeah.
No.
So
No. They didn't need to. This is precisely why they were relying on this network of local lords and local walis, and then so it's kind of a pyramidal scheme, but it's very informal. And they know which village, who's there, what's there, but they were mainly keeping track of the Muslim population in the late stages of the empire because they needed the men for the army service. The Christians were not allowed to serve the Ottoman army. So they needed to know how many Muslims there are in a particular. So that's why you need to go to the military records. Military is the main depository of such information. And I must say, I'm not familiar with how the taxes were working, but I'm pretty sure they were efficient about it, at least in the sense that how much their state and foreign powers allowed them. And I know that plenty of Muslims were converted to different forms of Christianity in the 19th century to avoid the military service under the Ottoman Empire.
really, I didn't know this.
In Greece, and people don't know. It's like today, look at Russia. Who wants to serve in the army? People are leaving. Whoever can will leave. And if it takes me going to Italy for a while and just staying there, and if I can afford it, I'll do it. Competition. Plenty of the Catholic missionaries, Protestant missionaries as well, was being sent by the churches to the Ottoman Empire to do the proselytism, so to preach, and hence many converts.
But was it different in a sense? Okay, you said there was clear line in millets in terms of millets, but when you compare Muslims and Turks, if you can compare them as a specific entity, and remaining, you cannot. It's just the Muslims and the rest.
Yeah.
Because in the Balkans, at least for me, as I was learning history and talking to people, I had a sense like, okay, there were Christians, nowadays Bulgarian, Greeks, Serbs, and so on. There are Muslims, Slavic Muslims, and then there are Turks. And that the Muslims are auxiliary force, and they're like in between, having better time than the Christians. But so it was not like that.
That's your point of view from the 21st century.
Yeah.
Everything that's going to come after it. But for some poor peasant from, Topola or, I don't know, Kruševac or something.
Cities in Serbia, by the way.
Yeah, these are towns in Serbia, or like Vidin or Pleven or Tuzla. I mean, that's not how they see it. What they see is, first of all, these people probably will never go to the capital of their vilayet. So, most people in Bosnia in the 19th century didn't get to go to Sarajevo, let alone to Istanbul. Few went to Istanbul.
Even nowadays it's hard because of the roads.
Yeah, but I don't know. So people can't afford these journeys. Even though the Hajj commands Muslims to go to Mecca, people can't really afford it. And there are ways around it, humane ways to avoid this. Islam was nowhere near so rigorous as, some forms of its contemporary forms of it want us to believe. It was a very humane approach. And of course, some people can't get it. You can't go from, Kazan in Siberia to Mecca. We understand. There are ways around it. But to go back to this point, most people didn't know anything beyond their, let's say, municipality. So places they see, people who they see. So they can only define themselves in these terms which are relevant for their life. I'm a Christian and this is my place. I'm a Jew and this is my place. I'm a Muslim and this is my place. they normally wouldn't even meet people who didn't speak their native language, because who's going to come from? No Istanbuli person wants to come to Tuzla to serve, or to Smederevo, or to Vidin. They want to avoid this if they can. I mean, Pasha will be sent to command the garrison of an important city, but no one was actually going to move to these provincial cities. And so these people don't even have the idea of the other. For him, it's the local other. The Muslim, the Croat, the Muslim, the Catholic, the Orthodox, maybe a Jew, maybe a German, or a Hungarian. That's it. That's what he understands. That's in his categorization of the world. He has no idea about these things you know about.
Mm-hmm.
So from the point of view of this Christian peasant from mountains of Bosnia, whether, who are the Turks? Well, they are Muslims. Aha, this is a Muslim, therefore he's a Turk. It's very, there's no depth to this interpretation. But you have to understand the limits of this man's world view.
Yep.
So that's why these concepts, they are relevant for us, but they're not relevant for someone in the 19th century.
Even in Anatolia, people were not calling themselves Turks until the Republic times, because also during some times calling someone Turk in the Anatolia was something like insulting.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, and people were not aware they were Turks or something, both because they were they didn't have any education. Even about their religion, they didn't know many things about their own. They just was carrying what they learned from their fathers and mothers. Some of them didn't even know their prophet's name. Some of them were calling my prophet is Ali. Like some of them know the Muhammad. Some of them were calling like the Sultan's name.
Oh.
And nationalism came to Anatolia after actually the Balkan Wars, when the educative military guys, like founding fathers of Turkey, when they come to Turkey, they established the nationalism here as well.
Because why? Because they were educated in France and Germany, and they drank the waters of nationalism.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, regarding this not being able to determine who you are, I mean, in the sense of nationally speaking, there was this exchange of population between Turkey and Greece after the Turkish War of Independence, and you had people ending up in different countries, not speaking the language of the different countries, but based on their religion. So they were, so to say, Turkish-speaking people of Greek Orthodoxy in Turkey that were moved to Greece, not all of them, of course, and they could not communicate. So they had also issues to adapt in those environment because the locals looked at them as Turks, although they were Christians, and vice versa for the Muslim-speaking Greeks in Greece moving to Turkey. It was insane, and it just based on religion, and that's it.
Yeah, but you see, that's exactly where you see what was relevant at the time. And I have to say, like the wars in the 90s, can anyone really understand them? I mean, like these are the same people, but they have divided themselves based on the religion, which also they don't understand. So none of them understands what exactly is Islam about, Orthodox Christianity, Catholic Christianity.
Not to offend anyone, there are exceptions, of course, but the majority of them, and speaking about the wars in the Yugoslavia, ex-Yugoslavia,
Most people I met have no idea what they believe in. So they just assume these totems. They take the totem and they hold on to it, and it becomes part of their identity. At the same time, they are not really aware. I mean, they have their own religion in their heads, but they seldom consult the official source, shall we say. So they seldom consult ulemas or priests or archbishop or bishop. It's just, it's a construct in their heads. It's very strong. It doesn't mean it's not strong. It's very strong, and it has a totemic power. And they recognize others by the iconography. So, the cross, there's this fascination with the fingers, the Serbian, the Croatian, the Bosniak. you can see there that these are just little gestures, so that each one has a little totem and little ritual of their own, where they can emphasize their identity in relation to the others.
To try to differentiate themselves. I
Which
mean,
is fine. It's fine. It's just it's the way they are coping. It's something called ontological insecurity. I don't really know what I am. I mean, if you would ask these days a Frenchman, a Frenchman or an American or a British person, I think most of them, they wouldn't know, they wouldn't need this, because they are certain of what they are. They hate the others, but they know what they are. There is a very clear line that behind which they are very ontologically secure in their nationhood. The nations, however, in these areas, Southeast Balkans, Southeastern Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Europe, they are the ones who tend to be insecure because of the centuries of foreign domination that we talked about. And I mean, although I'm very much to the left, I mean, I have to admit, communism also didn't help in this identitarian issue. In fact, it made it more complex by suppressing the national identities, for good or for bad, for better or for worse. And emphasizing class identities.
And also planning. So this will be formed as this identity here, or we just move this one there and make a specific unit there. Speaking about Soviet Union, for instance, yeah.
There are plenty of things. Also, this aspect of foreign domination. I mean, all these peoples think they were imposed communism from outside. To an extent, they're not wrong. But it helps you explain why are we so ontologically insecure behind the Iron Curtain, still wondering what we are and how can we differentiate ourselves from our neighbor, and why this process is still, it's headed this way. The current is headed that way. Identitarianism, distinguishing myself from my neighbor. And it's something that will continue, in my opinion, until it's an irrational calling, but I understand, because it's a psychological need to differentiate it, to know what you are by defining yourself through knowing what you are not, or who you are not.
Which I totally agree, but eventually it leads, as it did in the 90s and nowadays to some extent, but luckily not through war, to animosity between each other. And yeah, somehow on it we end up on this thing same over again in the previous episodes. We talk about how we are so similar and then end up killing each other. Yeah. So just for the sake of trying to be different and not being the different person next to me. Yeah, not to be the same as the person next to me, which totally illogical to me and I guess to all of us. To sum up this episode, I mean, we can go on and on through all of this stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah. Could you tell us or try to be as objective as possible, some heritage of the Ottoman Empire that's still present to nowadays, at least in the Balkans? I know you know Middle East and you can see it nowadays in Beirut, but you can say both bad, both good stuff. Yeah, from your point of view, from your perspective.
I would say a love of colors. So the colors of the Ottoman fashion, I mean, or rather, all the colors of the world. Our tendency of our people to put on all possible colors, women to be three girls at the same time, turbo folk. These are all, I think, profoundly Ottoman ways of showing a love of life. And they're also something I appreciate. I don't listen to turbo folk a lot. However, when I do listen to the classical Ottoman music, and you can hear a bit of everything there. You can hear Armenia and the Caucasus. You can hear the Balkans. I mean, my favorite song is, I know it's very, it's such a vanilla choice, but it's Üsküdar, a song that has many names and different lyrics in all the languages of the Ottoman Empire. An Armenian version, a Bosniak version, a Serbian version, Bulgarian, Macedonian, Greek, Jewish, and Turkish. Maybe, yeah, there's an Arabic too. There's an Arabic version too. And I love this. I love the music. I'm a very materialist and sensual person, you know, Taurus, zodiac. And so for me, everything is through, I perceive everything through senses and consuming things. So that's thing I love about our common Ottoman heritage. I'm sure you already have the episode on food.
For sure. Yeah,
And-
spoiler alert, yeah.
It's very banal. It's very banal to say like, oh well, I love the food. Well, I'm sorry, but it's very banal and it's very human. It's very human to love some food, and you know, were 6 centuries of Ottoman presence worth for Ayvar and
Cevap.
you know, here I'm drinking liters of Ayran. People are
I love Iran as well.
ridiculed. Yeah, my Ottoman heritage is being ridiculed. And but you know, this is what makes my life worth it, you know, like the colors, whether these are the colors that I see, you know, the patterns on the Ottoman clothing, which I love, you know, when you watch the fashion of the Ottoman or neo-Ottoman, when you see the architecture. I mean, here in Beirut, there is so much wonderful neo-Ottoman or Ottoman revivalist architecture. You know, it makes you just want to sigh and weep for this beauty. And I'm very sad that most of the Ottoman heritage, architectural heritage, was destroyed because it was in the process of deorientalization and occidentalization. And I think great part of our history has been lost there, because you know, Ottomans were present in Serbia for 400 years, most of Serbia 400 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good part of history. It's a good part of you know, it's a good sizable chunk of time, and everything that was created in this epoch was destroyed. And I understand why was it destroyed. I just feel it's missing, and that these colors, we have renounced them, and we can't then fully enjoy this aspect of our history. And you know, I just love to enjoy history. I mean, I read Byzantine or Ottoman or any other history of Florence, history of France, like a good whiskey. You know, it's just it's aged. It has aged, and now it's ready to be consumed. And it just makes so much fun. And you know, you understand the world better. You become more cynical, but you understand the world better, and you are not so. I think you realize how insignificant your existence is, and you know, you start, you know, just enjoying the colors. So this is, I think, our Ottoman heritage, the colors, which are still present in music and in the cuisine, in the fashion as well. But we need, I think, to return it also in the architecture and in the language. I tend to use more and more Ottomanist or Ottoman Turkisms in my articles that I'm writing. So, for instance, for my newest article, I use the sentence that Beirut, some wealth or well-off Beirutis yordamly ride their massive American cars through these narrow streets of Beirut. So I don't know if you understand that or not. Yordamli, is it still what it used to mean in Ottoman Turkish?
Yordamlı in current Turkish is like the way of doing something.
Right. So in Ottoman, Yordamli, or Yordam is the noun. It means vainly, proudly, but you know, with an air of superbia. In Serbian, it will be oholo, ponosno, osion. So this is one, for instance, I love to use Ottomanist words, not just Ottoman, but I love to like spray my articles with archaisms.
It's cool with the language. I mean, we noticed on the night, for instance, I said peshkir in front of him because I know peshkir, towel, is definitely not Slavic. And he was like, only old people use it, to be honest. So we didn't update the app since they left, and they moved on to a new word, and we stayed with this old one. So
yeah, like for
it's
example,
fascinating.
Kayish.
It's still Bashkir.
I see.
Kayish as well.
I mean, we can make the whole episode now out of it. I mean, we already planned one, but yeah, nevertheless, we just take a chunk of it. Yeah. I really love. It's beautiful how you describe the heritage from your point of view. Other people would disagree. Some would agree and say different things. But you mentioned colorings. I mean, you mentioned other things. Colorings itself is really unique and beautiful. I love it. I mean, I can also notice now what you mentioned. Yeah, in my head.
Wait, what's the word for color in Serbian?
Okay, it's not Slavic. Now I realized. Yeah, boya. I guess it's not.
Ah, boya is paint in Turkish.
Exact. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. I have this situation often with Tom. I just talk to him and I just like, yeah, it doesn't sound Slavic when I realized. Like, I happened to Budala, to Jap. I mean, yeah, it's not. Yeah. Just, I guess, not disappointed. I'm happy at the same time, but like, no, even that one is. So.
And our other word for color is farba, which is German.
German, yeah.
Well, the original Slavic word for color is must. Must.
Oh, and must today is Greece. I mean, not Greek, but fat Greece. Like, that way. Fascinating. Onat, would you like to ask something before we wrap it up?
I mean, it was a great time for me. I mean, I could listen for like 2 more hours, 3 more hours. It was really a pleasure to have you in our episode, and thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Onat. And some of my lectures lasted for 6 hours, so just so you know. So be careful what you wish for.
Well,
try to we tried to zip it up as much as we could, into our format. I mean, Little Bird is telling me from that we're gonna have you most likely in some upcoming episodes. Maybe we'll see. Yeah. Well, for all of us, for all of our audience and followers, please write down if you want some topic that you think Mirko will be competent to talk about. Although I guess cannot think of any topic that he cannot talk about, but. Write down if you like it. On everything, yeah. Just random. Just mash up. We start at one point and end up in the other one. Yeah, it can be really fun. Yeah, we can try this format. What do you think on it?
Yeah, we can change like some word from the dictionary and we can just start talking about that. Something related with
random
that.
One. Just, open up. Great. Why not? Thank you once more from my side as well, Mirko. It was really fun. I mean, you're as always really unique, and we would like to have you again in upcoming episodes. And we wish you all the best in Beirut in your upcoming endeavors and projects. Yeah, we're gonna put links of your guest. How you would say, like when you were guest at some shows, and you're also articles. Yeah, for the people to follow and read.
No, promote you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter and Instagram. I don't really check LinkedIn. I mean, I'm not a good professional.
Nevertheless, if you want, we can put that as well. Yeah, why not? Thank you once more, Mirko, and until next time.
Thank you for the opportunity to rant about everything and nothing involving the Ottoman Empire and other empires.
It was fun, nevertheless, more than we asked for.
Well, tosta de hair, as we say here. Good night, lads.
Good night.
And to everyone who logged in.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Good night.